Hello, everybody. Believe it or not, we're in Japan on this occasion. We're in a small town called Otoro, which is in the North Island in Japan. It's a small fishing village and a harbour here. And my objective today is simply to try and get across to you how serious the consequences can be on a Gardner engine, or on any engine for that matter, by just making a small mistake. So in order to do that, I'm going to hand you over now to my customer and my very good friend Robert Harlow, who's going to take you through this brief story. Over to you, Robert.
I'm Robert. This is our boat that we've sailed up here to Hokkaido, the northmost island of Japan, and we've left it here over the winter because of some need to get back to our friends and family in the United States. We left it here in the marina, and we left it in somebody's charge who was starting the engine on a regular basis. At some point, he was unable to start the engine anymore. He gave me a message and said the engine won't start, and apparently he tried a number of times to get it going, and had no luck at all. Eventually he stopped trying, and the engine sat for about 4 or 5 months here in a very deep winter in Hokkaido. When we arrived at the boat, we put it in the water, we turned on the starter, and the engine would not move at all and appeared to be seized. At the same time, I looked over and noticed that the stop lever who had started it the very last time had left the stop lever out, which of course would explain why he was unable to start it during the winter. It also was concerning that he said that he came down a number of times starting the engine and failing, of course. We don't know how many times he started it, but I think he was pretty vigorous in his attempts. So when we got to the island, we became pretty sure that the engine was seized entirely. We did a couple more diagnostic things and finally decided it was time to pull the engine apart and see what we had. At that point, we had invited Joe to come down and assist us, and we took the engine apart, and sure enough, at least 2 of the 5 pistons were fully seized with rust. The inside of the cylinder walls were coated with a small layer of rust, and the engine would obviously not turn under those conditions. We later took the engine apart, we pulled the cylinder heads off, we pulled the blocks up, and finally, with a lot of difficulty, freed the pistons and were able to take the cylinder heads out. The cylinder heads were rebored. Joe had brought with him a supply of new pistons and oversized rings, and the cylinder heads were returned. We fitted the new rings and pistons, were able to get the cylinder blocks back on, put the engine back together, and eventually restarted. The project here in Japan took us probably about 12 days of labor, and it included, of course, Joe's services and another very skilled Japanese mechanic working alongside myself, who can only really supply lunch.
But what was the essence? I mean, what was the mistake made at the outset?
Yeah, well, at the outset, in addition to not remembering to pull the stop lever out or push it back in at the end, what would have saved the day is if somebody like me turned spring on the stop lever mechanism. Had we done that, it would be nearly impossible to leave it in a position where it wouldn't start. We think that the sequence of events was probably multiple attempts at overstarting and likely pushing water into the salt water out through the mixing elbow, eventually filling up the water lift muffler and backing it up through the exhaust into the engine.
Okay, I think we've got the essential message across to you there. An expenditure of a few dollars on a spring would have saved an awful lot of work and an awful lot of trauma. Thank you so much.